Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy, and I am on a financial freedom journey with my family. I share all about that and more on my channel. And today we're going to be going over Diana's real life budget review. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it for Diana. So Diana is 35 years old and she lives in New York. She and her husband both work for the government. They are married and they have 3 kids who are 8, 4, and 5 months, which are kind of similar ages to my own children. So my kids are now almost 11, almost 6, and 3. So kind of similar age spread there, which is fun. And she has an annual gross income of about $111,000. That is for Diana only, which we'll talk about shortly. Her short-term financial goals and priorities is for a 3.5-month mat leave with no pay. So I think she is returning to work in September. So she is trying to take some additional time as unpaid. And it sounds like she's in a really good spot with that, which we'll talk about shortly. But she is wanting to make sure that she is able to pay for a extended maternity leave with no pay. For debt, her husband does have some debt. He has roughly $20,000 in credit card debt, but Diana is debt free and they do not currently combine their finances. So we will not be focusing on debt in this budget review, but I did want to just note that her husband does have some debt. As far as savings, she does have a $15,000 emergency fund and about $15,000 as well in long-term sinking funds. And her husband does not currently have any savings. So she's got about $30,000. As far as investments, Diana has about $56,000. Her husband has roughly $130,000. And she did note that her husband does contribute more to his 401k than she does currently. Her biggest financial struggle is not collaborating financially with her husband. She has noted in her budget review that he does not like to budget and he does not like to feel restricted. So that is a big financial struggle for her. And her long-term financial goals are to budget with her husband, stay debt-free, and buy an investment property. So I do just quickly want to address the budgeting with her husband and having the separate finances. So I personally do not have a strong opinion on like the way that people should do their own budget. I know there's a lot of other popular financial creators like Dave Ramsey who have very, very strong opinions on this topic that feel like if you're married, you should be combining finances 100%. I do personally combine finances with my husband. We combine everything. So we have like one checking account, one savings account. We combine all of our money essentially. I know that doesn't work for everyone. And so obviously when I'm saying this, like I do recognize that doesn't work for everyone, but it sounds like Diana is wanting that. And so my advice to you, Diana, is to have an open dialogue with your husband again about this topic. I think that the way that you can present budgeting does not have to be restrictive, and maybe just see if he would be willing to give it a try. You guys can always not combine in the end of it. Like you don't have to necessarily jump all the way in, but I would say it sounds clearly like you are wanting to combine finances. And personally, as someone who does combine finances, I do feel like it makes my husband and I like better budgeters. It makes everything easy, especially with having young kids. Like it can be really challenging to have things split because it's kind of like who's paying for what. And then you have like 3 children to be thinking of and like who's picking up this and this. And it just can be very like mentally overwhelming sometimes. So I totally understand the want to combine the finances. So number one, have an open dialogue with your husband and have that conversation with him. Tell him that you're willing to be flexible, maybe in your budgeting style. So if he wants to have like maybe more personal spending money, you can accommodate that. But I think especially because it seems like, and obviously this is not, the full picture that we're seeing here. This is just a piece of paper, right? But I think that by looking at this, it is showing me that you, Diana, are very like on track. You are saving money, debt free. You've got investing going on, all of these wonderful things. You've got a budget and you're in a really good spot. And it seems like your husband is not in as good of a spot. He has some credit card debt. He doesn't have as much savings. He is investing heavily, which is great. But I think that you could really be a very good influence on that. And so I think it would be a very strong position for you guys to come in together and have a single budget, work together, and not be like working separately. So that is my thoughts. I know that conversation is a difficult conversation because, especially for people who maybe have never budgeted before, it can feel really restrictive. But I think that if you can show him that you're willing to give him a little bit more flexibility, maybe in the budget, or give him some, additional spending money, or whatever he needs to feel like he still has that, freedom, quote unquote. I think that could go a long way. And I think that is a conversation that you guys need to have, because clearly you're wanting that and that's not what's happening. So I think that just open dialogue, having that conversation, and just encouraging him that, what company in the US or anywhere doesn't have a budget? That's how I like to think of it. And that's kind of how I had posed it to my husband. Like, because my husband did not budget prior to meeting me. And even when we were first together, we did not budget together either. Like, we were not budgeting. So I think when I had brought up the, at that time, it was really like a Dave Ramsey plan type of thing, but we've kind of evolved since then, as a lot of you guys know. But when I first brought up like budgeting and paying off debt, he was a little bit like, we've never done it before. So why? We're doing fine, So I think it can be a little bit of like just easing into it and explaining the why behind it. And I think something that really helped me was telling him, making that like connotation of, the US government and all of these different companies in the US, none of them don't have a budget. All of them have some sort of budget. They have some sort of tracking system. Like, they're not just freely spending money regardless of how successful they are, right? Like, Apple is not just randomly spending money and just randomly throwing things out and just doing things. Like, they have strict fiscal budgets and things like that. So I think if you can view it as that, like, sometimes it can be helpful to make that like connection of like, yeah, we are a business. Our family is like a business, and we should run it that way to an extent. So hopefully that will help. But I do think that you do need to have that conversation with him, because I think it's clear based on your budget review that you are wanting that connection and that just joint work towards those goals. And I think that would be really helpful in your situation. Again, I'm not like strongly opinionated on this, but just based on what was presented, I do think that this is a good opportunity for them to be working together. And I think that you both seem to have some strengths that maybe the other one doesn't have. And sometimes when you are combining, that can be really powerful in a positive way. And some of Diana's long-term financial goals, she does want to budget with her husband. She wants to stay debt-free and buy an investment property. So those are all really good long-term financial goals. I think that could be a really good strategy. Buying an investment property is definitely challenging, but absolutely something that can be very positive for your long-term portfolio, and if that is the way that you guys want to go. So let's go ahead and get into Diana's budget. I am not going to create a debt payoff plan for her at this time because they do not combine finances. So right now we're not going to do that. But Diana, if you and your husband combine finances, I would love it if you would come back and do another budget review with me. I would love to film a second part to this as a combined household. I think that would be really interesting to see how things would change and how much more you guys could be working together on these goals. So if that happens, absolutely, please let me know. I would love to do a part 2 on this video. But let's go ahead and get into Diana's budget next. All right, so before we get into Diana's budget, I did just make a note of the things that she had identified as her husband paying for, because I think it is important to kind of see the whole picture here. And because we're only doing a budget for one of the two, I did just want to make these call outs. So her husband does pay for their rent, which is roughly $2,700 a month. He pays for their life insurances. He pays for the after school expenses for their oldest 2 children, which is roughly $500 a month. And then he pays for his own variable expenses. Now, again, something that Diana did not necessarily outright share, obviously it's a Google form, there's not like a ton of room there, is how they end up kind of splitting those kids' expenses. So obviously she did share that her husband does pay for the after school for the older 2, and it looks like she is paying for the daycare for their younger one. But just out of curiosity, I would be interested to know like about kids' expenses, especially as your kids are getting older. Like, I know for ourselves, like we have a lot of like sports fees and things like that. So just would be interested to know like how you guys are handling that. But again, I think it would be really helpful and powerful for you guys to work together, especially with these kids, because it can be really challenging to work separately when you have 3 individuals who are completely combined of both of you, right? Like, it can be really challenging to kind of continue to split. I think it can be really easy to split things before you have kids, but I personally would find it really challenging to split expenses when you have like these joint children together, like that are costing a lot of money, clearly. So, anyways, we're going to be going over just Diana's budget. So I just want to reiterate that this is just Diana's income and this is just her expenses. So she does bring home roughly $65.30 a month, which is incredible. Very awesome job and great income to work with. And she did also note in here that she is 3 months ahead on bills. Now, if you remember, she is kind of planning for that, 3 months not unpaid maternity leave that she'll be taking soon. So I think that that is, part of why she is 3 months ahead at this point, is because she does want to be prepared for that. And I think that generally, Diana, it seems like you are in a really, really good spot for that. So that's amazing that you're able to take that additional time and that you're able to, have that money set aside already, seemingly. So that's great. As far as fixed expenses for Diana, again, her husband does pay the rent. So there is no rent expense on here, but she does cover the electricity for $450, gas and heat for $140, internet for $38, cell phones for $57. Now, if you guys have watched some of these videos, I personally use Mint Mobile. I love it. It has been amazing. And you could almost cut this in half if you wanted to switch. Now, again, I know it's not for everyone, and definitely check out like the coverage map on their website and all of that to make sure that you would get good cell phone, network in your area and all of that. But that is something that my husband and I both have switched. This video is not sponsored in any way, but just wanted to make that call out because it could save you a little bit of money. And she also does $75 for their 529s, car insurance at $400, which does seem a little bit high. This is for both of their cars, so her and her husband's vehicle. So, I think it's a little bit high. Maybe you could shop around and see if you could get a lower rate elsewhere. But yeah, you could potentially save money here as well. Water bill is $50, but they do pay it quarterly. So she sets aside $50 a month for that. Daycare at $16.65. Now I know she lives in New York and that is an incredibly expensive area for childcare. So $16.65 seems entirely reasonable to me based on what I've heard from a lot of others that live in New York and on the East Coast generally. And then she also has tolls for $40. So that brings all of her fixed expenses to $2,915 and her remaining at $3,615. Now, moving up to variable expenses, Diana did not split out her variable expenses in the budget that she had sent me. So I'm not sure if this is actually how she budgets or not. But something that I would recommend personally is breaking out categories, because I think it can be really helpful to know where you're spending money. So while you're spending $1,600 on variable expenses, that's not telling us where you're spending that money. So I would recommend splitting that out, groceries, eating out, gas, miscellaneous, personal spending, like having those distinguished categories can really help. And that'll be something that you can kind of play around with. And I think that would be especially important if you do end up combining finances, because it would be really helpful to know, especially for like the personal spending side of things, because it sounds like her husband does like enjoy spending money and he likes having that freedom. So I think having like a dedicated personal spending category would be really helpful in that scenario if you guys are combining finances. And then she also did have a cash expense here for $160. I'm not sure if that's cash for anything in particular, or if she just enjoys having cash on hand, but I did include that in the variable expenses as well. So with all of that combined, her variable expenses are $1,820 and remaining is just under $1,800. Now, she did indicate that she does have her sinking funds, which she described in her budget intake. So she didn't list them out separately, which is fine. But she has about $1,300 going into sinking funds right now, which is incredible. That's a lot of money that is able to go into sinking funds, which is great. And then she also has a yearly subscription category as well that she puts $110 a month into. I think that's really great, especially if you have a lot of annual expenses, to be able to have that money set aside every single month. So those are kind of her sinking funds set up. And for sinking funds, that was a total of $1,410. And her total remaining is $385. Now, she did have a Roth IRA in here that she was contributing $100 a month to. Based on this budget, I would consider upping that. So I just put the rest into the Roth IRA. I think that it seems like you're in a really good spot with savings. You're at about $30,000, which is fantastic. No debt, so nothing to worry about there. I would flag a little bit that the investments are maybe a little bit low for your age. So at 35, like when you're in your 30s, you kind of want to have roughly 1 times your annual salary in investments. So if we're looking at that, you're a little bit behind on the investment side, which is totally understandable because she did say in her debt review form that she has actually paid off a significant amount of debt. So I think that that's likely why the investments are maybe a little bit lower, because she was focusing on debt for so long. So it's something I would consider. I know she is putting money into her 401k right now. I would consider bumping up the 401k, even if it's only, 1 to 2 to 3%. I think that that would be really helpful. So increasing investing on this side, and then also increasing investing in the Roth as well. Roth IRAs in combination with a traditional 401k through your employer are a great wealth building strategy, because you're getting some of the pre-tax and also some of the post-tax. So it's kind of doing both. And it's a really great way to continue to build up your investments. So if I were to give you any advice on this, your budget looks great, Diana. Like generally, like you're killing it. You're doing great. You're putting a lot of money into sinking funds. You're 3 months ahead on bills. You have a great amount of money saved. You have no debt. Like that's incredible. The one thing though is the investments. So I think that this is a great time in your life to be bumping those up. So again, consider bumping up the 401ks through your check, even if it's again like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4%, and then also increasing the Roth IRAs as well. And also, because you are going to be going on unpaid maternity leave for a part of the summer, I would also be flexible with that as well. You don't necessarily need to increase these right now. I would totally understand if you would want to wait until that unpaid time is over before you're bumping any of these up. So these are just kind of future tips for your budget moving forward, because again, you are in a really good spot. So there's really not much for me to tell you at this point, except for that I think that you could increase that. And I know that one of your long-term goals as well is to buy an investment property. And so I'm guessing that maybe some of the sinking funds, maybe one of those sinking funds is some sort of like future home purchase or investment property purchase. But if not, I think that that could be another area that you could kind of add into here for a future investment property, just setting aside, a few $100s a month to kind of get that savings started, because you will want to have, a good down payment if you are wanting to purchase an investment property in the future. So that is all I have for you, Diana. Again, please have that open dialogue with your husband, have that conversation. Tell him that you are wanting to combine finances with him. And I think and hope that that conversation will go well. And please report back to me if you do end up combining finances, because again, I would love to do another one of these for you with a combined view of your finances. I think that that would be really interesting and helpful for people to see how much more you can really get done when you have the two incomes working together. So thank you, Diana, for filling out the form. If you want your own budget review done by me, I'm no professional, I'm just a regular person. But if you would like to hear my thoughts on your budget, feel free to click that link in the bio down below and fill out the form. I would love to do a budget review for you as well. So that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you on Friday for Debt Free Friday. Bye, guys.